On the day after Christmas, 1900, a supply boat anchored beneath a lighthouse off the west coast of Scotland. Its lamp had been dark for about 10 nights. A keeper climbed the rock, opened the door, and found the rooms empty. 3 men were gone, and they were never seen again. The lighthouse stood on Eilean Mor, the largest of the Flannan Isles, a cluster of uninhabited rocks in the Atlantic, about 20 miles west of the Isle of Lewis in the Outer Hebrides. It was almost new. The light had first been lit on the 7th of December, 1899, almost exactly a year before. 3 keepers were on the rock. James Duckett, the principal keeper, with over 20 years of service, Thomas Marshall, the second assistant, and Donald MacArthur, a local man serving as occasional keeper, while the first assistant was away on sick leave. Their world was small and brutal: a tower, a few rooms, a landing carved into the cliff, and an ocean that could rise without warning. Their only job was simple and absolute: keep the light burning. By the middle of December 1900, the light went out. Around midnight on December 15th, a passing steamer, the Arctur, bound from Philadelphia to Leith, noticed something wrong. The Flannan light was dark. By the time the ship reached port and the sighting was passed on, days had gone by, and bad weather held the relief vessel back. It wasn't until December 26 that the lighthouse tender Hesperus finally reached the island carrying the relief keeper, Joseph Mor. No flag flew, no keeper waited at the landing. The ship's whistle and a rocket brought no response. So Mor was put ashore, alone. He found the entrance gate and the outer door shut. Inside, the beds were empty. The clock had stopped. The fire had been cold for days. The lamp was cleaned and ready, but unlit, and the kitchen was tidy. The utensils clean. Then, one detail that has unsettled people for over a century. 2 sets of the keeper's weatherproof gear, oilskins and sea boots, were gone, but one man's coat still hung inside. Duckett and Marshall had dressed for the weather. MacArthur, it seems, had run out into a December storm in his shirt sleeves. Here we need to separate what's real from what was invented. You may have heard that the keepers left a half-eaten meal on the table and an overturned chair, or even a logbook describing them weeping and praying through a monstrous storm. None of that is in the official record. The relief keeper found the kitchen clean and the dishes put away. The untouched meal and the toppled chair came from a 1912 poem by Wilfred Wilson Gibson, and from newspapers months after the event. The dramatic diary of terror was invented later still, in a 1929 magazine story. The real records are quieter and, in a way, stranger. The Northern Lighthouse Board sent a superintendent named Robert Muirhead, a man who had personally recruited all 3 keepers and knew them well. At the island's west landing, he found real damage. A storage box wedged in a crevice about 110 feet above the sea had been torn open and emptied. Iron railings were bent and twisted. The iron railway was wrenched from its concrete, and a rock weighing more than a ton had been moved. At the cliff top, over 200 feet above the water, turf had been ripped away. To Muirhead, the story was tragic and plain. The men had gone down to secure that box against the storm, and an extra-large sea had risen up the face of the rock and swept them away. Duckett and Marshall had gone down in their gear. MacArthur had run after them in his shirt sleeves, and whoever left last had broken the one rule that must never be broken. One keeper must always remain with the light. It is the most credible explanation we have. But the silence left room for doubt, and people filled it with sea serpents, ghost ships, foreign spies, and murder. These make for good stories. They are not evidence. More than a century later, the Flannan Isles case has never been formally solved. The lighthouse still stands. It runs automatically now, with no one to keep it, Most historians accept the freak wave explanation, but most likely is not the same as known. 3 men walked out into a December storm and simply never came back, and the rock has kept its silence ever since. If you had to choose, what do you think happened that night on Eilean Mor? Tell me in the comments, and try to separate the record from the legend, the way we just did. For more forgotten histories and unsolved mysteries, subscribe to the Shadows of History.